Welcome back to Special Ed on Special Ed. I am your host, Dana Johnson, and I am here with Kurt McEnany. And this is a great episode for parents because we're going to talk about some basic social skills and a book that Kurt wrote that is really accessible for parents and kids of any typically developing kids, children with social skills deficits, everything in between. And we're going to talk about why this book is so special and what you can get out of it. But of course, I can't say anything without my disclaimer, so let's play that first.
The information in this podcast is provided for general informational and entertainment purposes only and may not reflect the current law in your jurisdiction at the time you are listening. Nothing in this episode creates an attorney-client relationship, nor is it legal advice. Do not act or refrain from acting on the basis of any information included in or accessible through this episode without seeking appropriate legal or other professional advice on particular facts and circumstances at issue from a lawyer or service provider licensed in your state, country, or other appropriate licensing jurisdiction.
Hi, Kurt. Thank you so much for being here with me. I am so glad we were able to do this.
Hi, Dana. Thank you for having me. I am too.
Yes, I want to give a little bit of an introduction for you. Kurt is the author of the award-winning social and career skills crash course book. It's also an ebook. It's also an audiobook, and there's online courses. And it's called Smile and Succeed for Teens, Must-Know People Skills for Today's Wired World. Popular for transition and endorsed by Temple Grandin. His books include The Parent's Guide for Smile and Success for Teens, Teaching Guide for Smile and Success for Teens, and the award-winning book, Smile, Sell More with Amazing Service. And we're going to talk about all of those, Kurt. I really just wanted to start with, I know your first book was the Sell More with Amazing Service, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So if you could just tell me, how did you get here? How do you go from sell more to I'm going to help teens with social skills?
That's a great question, Dana. Well, what happened, right out of college, I had a startup specialty retail store. And we had a competitor across the street, a competitor down the street. It was like back when windsurfing was popular, inline skating, rollerblades. We had snowboards, skateboards, but it was a business. I mean, we had to make a profit. So I had 25 teenagers working for me, and I created a 6-week training program. And this will get into why I wrote these books for the teens to give them confidence. But also, I couldn't afford to lose a customer. I couldn't afford to have you walk in and ask about a different rollerblade bearing and have them say, I don't know. So they were trained to greet and say please and thank you. And I hired nice teens anyways. We had a great group of teens. But fast forward, I don't know, probably 10 years, I realized some businesses weren't training employees. So I thought if I could write a quick, easy to read crash course, just covering the things that usually irritate people, such as what we talked about, how to answer the phone properly. So I did that. And then I had all these moms and teachers, and this will answer your question, how I got
Yes.
tell me, you have to get this book in the schools. It's all the people skills kids aren't learning. So I got it into DECA, but it's a business book. So that's when I wrote Smile and Succeed for Teens. And I spent 9 months meeting with teenagers. But it was funny, Dana, because I would see the names on my website of people buying my book. And on Google, I was curious to what kind of teacher are they? And they were always like a special education or autism teacher. And I was thinking, I wonder why they're buying this, because I wrote it for all teens. But that's who was buying it. And they finally told me, well, it's short. It's frankly the things that young adults need to know because the unemployment rate is so high. And they said it's got a lot of graphics for visual learners and for short attention spans. It was good. So that's how I got into this. And really, I remember as a teenager being very nervous when I was in middle school. I never knew what to say. I wish I would have had something like this to guide me.
Yeah, I mean, that is what it is. It's sort of a guidebook. As we were discussing before we got on air, several years ago, I had my children in a homeschooling co-op, and I discovered that they didn't know how to answer the phone unless it was one of their friends calling. Like they didn't know, they would just click the button and put it up to their head. And I thought, well, you have to say hello. Or if you call someone and it's not your friend who answers, you have to explain who you are. And talking to other parents, we started to realize that there was as you said, in this wired world where they are so reliant on all this tech. And I hear some people say, well, do you really, that's the way the world is going. Yes. But I think underneath it all, you do have to understand what those soft skills are, because at some point, those soft skills also have to come across in your tech in some way. So if you don't know how to answer the phone from a stranger, or you don't know how to call someone and get someone you don't know on the other end of the line, that's going to be a huge barrier for you at some point. So we tried to put together a soft skills group, and I'm a former special ed teacher. So we got some books on soft skills and activities for kids. And it was, I found myself one day with this group of kids. They were a great group of kids. They were really great and they were really happy to be there and they thought it was fun, but they were building a tower with like sheets of paper or something. And one of them turned to me and said, "Why are we doing this?" And I thought, I have no idea, and I'd taken it out of the book. And I was like, I really don't know what we're getting out of this activity. But that's why I was so drawn to your book, because as you said, it's brief, but it's not lacking. It's giving you exactly the point you need to know. And then, you can dig a little deeper if you want to. And as you said in your parent and teacher copies, which I suspect came after the book, when you realized that everyone needed a little guidance on how to implement this, that, it started to evolve. Talk to me a little bit about what's inside this book, this magic book of briefness.
Well, I love how I even wrote that down, brief but not lacking. I used to work for a New York Times bestselling children's book author, and he had a teaching guide. So luckily I knew before I wrote my book to put a teaching guide together, and I had 2 teachers get started on it, and they spent a year and a half, but we kept it really thin, easy to implement, so there's no prep time for an instructor. But inside my book, exactly what you mentioned, how to answer the phone properly. And, I tried to make the book, like I told you before the show with my editor, so there were no wasted words or no big words that people might not be able to understand. So it's Lexile measured at a 4th grade reading level, which simply means that for the brain, as you know, the brain doesn't have to work as hard to comprehend the information. It doesn't mean it's only for 4th graders.
Right.
So
right.
in the book is, for instance, how to answer the phone properly when you answer the phone. And these are right, just so you know, this book is based on my first book, Smile, Sell More with Amazing Customer Service, because that was the book that came from my 6-week training program that I developed when I had a startup specialty retail store and I had 25 teens working for me. So for answering the phone, for instance, it teaches them why it's important in one paragraph to answer the phone and leave a great first impression. But then it says, here's how. And if the example would be, "Good morning. This is Surf's Up. This is Sarah. How may I help you?" Something like that. And in the book, it teaches you how to do that. So it's quick and easy. They read a little paragraph of why, and then they learn how to do it. And then with the parent's guide or the teaching guide, I have role-playing activities. So one student can be the person answering the phone in the store, and the other student can be the customer calling, and vice versa, or the parent and the teen. It depends on the relationship the parent has with their teenager. Sometimes the teen would like to work with their parents. Sometimes they don't want to have anything to do with their parent.
Sometimes that's not really successful.
Exactly. And, a lot of the other content, it's really about social skills, but it's social skills are really good customer service skills. So a lot of it is greeting a customer properly. I mean, how many of us have walked into a business and been ignored? So creating that great first impression. And the book is really about creating great first impressions, body language, not slouching, standing upright, engaging that customer or that person, how to make a friend at work, how to engage a customer, like, "Hi, how are you? Thank you for coming in. I like your sweater," things like that. So a lot of the things in the book are how to interview and get a job, for instance, how to properly dress and what to say during an interview, and role-playing mock interview questions, such as, "Why do you want to work here?" And teaching the young adults to research the company first. Or if you go in and ask for a job application, you're dressed professionally, because that person might be the owner of the company when you ask for an application, and how to ask politely for that. And as an employer, when I would have young adults come in my store, if they were dressed professionally, and I know with autism it's tricky, but if they had some type of good eye contact, but more importantly, a positive attitude, they were polite with good manners, and they asked, "Could I please have a job application?" And I could just feel that they had good communication skills. Even if I didn't have a job for them, I would say, "Do you have a minute just to interview right now?" I would find a job for that person. Because as a business owner, as you know, I'm always thinking, can this person do a great job with my customer? I can't afford to lose a single one.
Right. Right. Well, that's great. And I think, when you said with autism, it's a little tricky because, especially when you're talking specifically about eye contact, maybe.
Yes.
But for any child that has, different components, I think what's really important is understanding the whole picture. As you said, it's not just about smiling. It's not just about eye contact. It's also about your energy. And if you are making yourself smile, that is changing your energy. And that's now that we've learned so much about our plasticity in our brain and how we can sort of trick ourselves into being in a better mood sometimes. That idea that if you're putting together the whole picture and fake it till you make it, kind of, it brings that energy with you. I wrote down what the chapters were. I kind of wanted to go through them. I see that you broke it down into like 7 chapters, right?
Yes.
And I just want to read them all at one point, but right now, because I think it's an interesting progression. So chapter 1 is the top 10 people skills. It's like the basics, right?
Yes.
Chapter 2, get that job. Chapter 3, keep them smiling. Chapter 4, treat people how you want to be treated. Chapter 5, sell more with great people skills. I just lost my track. Oh, chapter 6, keep customers smiling after the sale. And chapter 7, be a rock star. So it seems like there's a natural progression there. And what I also found in reading it is some of it is very job specific. And I don't want to turn people off to this book if they're thinking this isn't a child who's going to be working or interviewing for a job, because I think all of the skills within those pieces, for example, keeping them smiling after the sale. And I think there's something about returns, if someone's returning things. I think it's a great example of if there's some friction in the conversation or things aren't going exactly the way you anticipated, right?
Exactly.
Why did you break it down into these components? Like what's that progress that you see in the book and in the process?
Great question. Well, the reason I did that, I put the top 10 in both of my books because I thought in today's society, we live in such a drive-through quick society. Yeah. If they only get, and I put smile and say hello first in both of my books, because I thought if they only get that out of it, they're way ahead of the pack. Yeah. And as simple as these things sound, Tom Peters wrote a great book when I was in college called In Search of Excellence. And he talks about business saying, the little things are the big things. And that's true in relationships with people. You know, if you have a friend or if you're meeting somebody and they smile and say, hi, it's huge. Versus, you know, you get invited to somebody's house party or their maybe dinner party and you walk in and how would you feel if nobody said anything to you? And that happens quite a bit in business. So I agree with you. And I broke it down this way because I put smile first, but then I put the top 10 thinking if that's all the young adult reads is the top 10, like I said before, they'll be way ahead of the pack because, and I'll show you a couple of these examples, smile, make good eye contact. One thing I wanted to talk about the eye contact, which is a good tip for your listeners, is I put a little bullseye under make good eye contact. And I said, look at someone's nose when you're talking to them. You know, if you're not comfortable with the eye contact, you could look at their chin. You could look at their shoulder, something like that. And the other ones that I put in here, which are why I did it in this order, turn off the electronics. You know, a lot of young adults, I bet they haven't been really guided in when it's appropriate to have your electronics out and when it's not. So it's just a good reminder. Interview like a pro. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong section. Shake hands firmly, because that's another important lesson. Whether you're making friends or if you're interviewing for a job, pay attention, which is listening, be enthusiastic, ask questions, and then body language. So I put those in there because I thought if that's all they do, they will create a great first impression, whether it's friendships, relationships, or at a job. And the rest of them, I put the interviewing next for chapter 2, because how to prepare for that interview is important.
Well, and I like that part about preparation, you know, that this isn't about showing up and having the skills. There's prep work.
There's prep work.
You know.
And then chapter 3, it's really like apologize and mean it, call people by name, dress for success, be prepared. Learn your business. If you're working somewhere, learn the products. Chances are the employer isn't. I train my employees on everything, the competitors' products, our products. Most employers, they kind of just throw you on the floor. But luckily, you can read the hang tags. You can read the descriptions on the boxes. You can learn about the products that way. So really, that's about being successful in relationships and at work. And then chapter 4 is treat people how you want to be treated. And that's a lot of about when you're already working, how to approach a customer. For instance, how many of us have walked in a business and maybe there's an employee with a customer already. Well, how do you feel if if they just ignore you until they're done with that customer? I teach them to say, "Hi, how are you? Thank you for coming in. I'll be with you in a minute," or I'll get somebody else to help you.
Mm. Well, and I like that because that's about like acknowledging other people. That would be the same if somebody walked up to a conversation you were having and, you're in a social situation and someone's sort of standing off to the side, that skill right there would be about including the other person, making them not feel on the outside of that conversation. You recognize them, they're part of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. And all of these exactly are social skills. So they pertain to relationships, like you said, or the workplace, because great customer service skills are simply great social skills. And then chapter 5, it's really about sales and customer service. Chapter 6 is really, if you get maybe a complaining customer. Chapter 7, be a rock star, is all about volunteering. So a lot of these young adults, it's great practice for them with social skills to be volunteering. So it teaches them some of the skills they need and also some of the fundraising skills, how to overcome the fear of asking for the donation. For example, I teach them once they're talking to somebody, if they ask for the donation, would you like to donate? Don't keep talking, just be quiet. It could be a minute or two, but you just be quiet because they'll be silent.
Knowing when to be silent is the most important thing, right? Sometimes that pause can be really loud.
Oh, you're right. Great. It's so important. And so many people will ask for the donation. They'll ask, would you like to donate? Because, it's a really good cause and we're doing great things and we've got great people and we're helping a lot of dogs. By the time they say that, that person's mind, it's going somewhere else to the grocery list or something.
Well, I think part of that too is, at least for my children, I have a lot of them. So, they don't like silence. They're not used to that. They're used to constant being, sort of attacked almost by sounds and light and things always happening on their devices. And I think the idea of having just a pause is almost a little frightening sometimes. So they feel they have to fill the air. And if they're speaking with an adult and the adult isn't responding immediately or exactly the way that they think they should, they feel they need to do something different. So I think learning that pause is actually a really, really important skill. And it also gives somebody else an opportunity to speak, because I know we have that problem in my house sometimes too. There's no one's giving anyone airtime. So we have to, give the pause, give us a second. Someone else might have a comment to make.
Great point. I love that you said that about the pause because I didn't think about that. Kids these days are so used to constant bombardment of this information and that pause is so powerful.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of, that's a good overview of what's in the book: fundraising skills, volunteering, relationship skills, how to make a friend, how to go up to somebody and introduce yourself. I mean, how many kids know how to do that? I think that's so important. And, one reason I put volunteering in there is, we've got so many causes in the world that are so important, but and this is not a knock on anybody. Most people that serve on boards, the adults are terrified to ask for money. It's just how it is. So if we get the teens comfortable with that and they get older and serve on boards in 20 years, they will love to ask for money, realize that people feel good when they donate, and they'll be able to raise a lot of money for these causes and maybe solve some of them, which would be wonderful.
That would be amazing. I know we're putting a lot on the next generation, I have to say. But, and that is a good point. I always say I'm just trying to raise, independent contributing members of society. Like if they can be contributing members of society, I will be very, very happy. And that is part of it, being a part of your community. It's not just about getting paid. It is about volunteering and getting engaged with things that are meaningful to you. And I think it is easy for the younger generation. It's a little different with us. And we've had this tech for a really long time, but it all augmented our communication. It wasn't our communication. And I see that with my children and other children, that this is their communication. It's not augmenting their communication. But you still have to work with people and engage with people who are in different generations. I don't think there's ever going to be a time where there's just one generation in the workforce or one generation doing something. So, and on some level, we're all going to be interacting. And to have that guide work behind you to understand, like, okay, if I'm talking to Like, for example, I'll say my kids will say, my friends don't care about that. No, but I bet their parents do.
Yes.
And if you're in their house and you've got your feet on the coffee table and you're not saying please and thank you, you're not going to go back, So it doesn't matter if your friend is interested in that. Read the room. And I think there's some of that in here too about, read the room and understand all of the situation, not just that one piece, but as we've said, like not in big chunks. Like it's these individual pieces that when you put them all together, make perfect sense for helping any child understand these social skills, the soft skills that we really, really need. Now, I know you also do courses on this. So how did that evolve and what do those look like?
Well, I've got, during the pandemic, we came up with an online course and it's the same exact content as the book, but it's online. It's ADA compliant also and compatible with the free Google Read Write.
Okay.
But we were able to add interactive questions and answers to it because it's online, some curated videos. I tried to make it really affordable for parents, $24.99 for the whole year. It only takes an hour to complete the course, but if your young adult wants to go back and refresh something, or maybe they get a job and need to go back and do it, the pricing is really goofed up because teachers think they think I priced it way too low. They're like, it should be $25 a month. Well, I mean, what do I do? Make it that now?
I know. I hear you.
It's really confusing. But, I just tried to make the content digestible for however the young adult wants to read it or listen to it or do it online, whatever they're comfortable with. And I wanted to just make a quick point. You had mentioned some of the younger people might not think these skills are important. Well, I'll tell you, when you're working somewhere and you have customers, and us as a customer, we feel like these skills are important. So these are really evergreen skills. They'll never go out of style. Good manners will never be outdated. I think maybe with their friends, they can get away with doing some of these kinds of things. But like you said, with the parents, when they get in the world of work or making relationships with other people, you want to have friends that are nice. And I think this teaches them how to do that.
Yeah. And I remember in an internship I did once ages ago, I was told right off the bat, if your email, and this is how old I am, email was fairly new in the work world. And I was told, treat it like a letter. There should be a greeting. There should be an ending. And please, no text speak ever.
Yes.
And, in that moment, I was like, well, okay, like, of course, but whatever. And now I receive things from students or kids who want to do an internship with me or something along those lines. And none of that is in there. And I think, well, what? No, I'm not like, I can't respond to text speak. And I have actually responded to a few kids and said, if I do or don't have anything available, but I would like to let you know my first impression on this. And I hope that this is something you'll take with you. And I don't know, maybe they're offended, maybe they're not. I don't get a lot of feedback on that. But I do think that it's never the wrong thing to have the right manners. Even if you don't think the person around you or the person with you cares, it's not going to hurt you to have the right response or to know the appropriate way to do something. There's a great line in, I don't know if you know that movie Blast from the Past. It's great. It's the Christopher Walken's in it, but they end up in the 1950s in a bomb shelter and they don't come out until like the 90s or something. And so the adult son now has these, manners, like 1950s manners. And he says to somebody, he's like, well, they say, oh, you think you're so important. He's like, no, having good manners shows respect for the people around you. And I love the way that was phrased. This isn't about me thinking I'm better than. This is about me showing respect for you. And I think ultimately for yourself as well, right?
Yes, I love it. Yes, this is all about respecting that other person. I'll have to watch that movie. That sounds really good. And I love what you said. It doesn't hurt you to have great manners. It really doesn't. This is all about making a great first impression, whether they're applying for college, a job, making new friends, meeting parents, who knows who they're going to meet, but you're really representing yourself and you want to be the best version. And, when you know these things, it gives kids confidence also, because a lot of times they don't know what to say. And that's why I put the Parents Guide together, really to help parents if they want to role play with their young adults or help them overcome anxiety. There's a lot of activities in there.
I love that because, and I like that you have that in the parents book, because I think sometimes as adults, we think some of these things are intuitive, right? So we may not recognize what actually needs to get practiced. what are the words I should be teaching? And I'm guilty of that all the time. And I think I'm like, how could you not know that? And they're like, I don't know, I just don't. So, but I think, to have that written down for parents, because it's like I said, like when I was doing that exercise with those children a few years ago, and I was like, I don't know why we're doing it. I don't know why we're doing it. And so to have that written out for parents, and I know for me, I always, growing up, I wasn't a huge fan of role playing, but personally, I was always very nervous, like, oh, am I going to get it right? But it's so important. It really makes such a difference, because the more you practice something, the easier it becomes, whether, you're practicing it in role playing or not. And I think it really is a critical component. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to generalize that skill, right? So, but to at least know what that skill is to start with.
I agree with you. And when I did a lot of role playing in our business, I'd tell people, we can do it off to the side if you don't want to be in front of everybody. And you're going to make mistakes. I want you to. And after a while, you're doing a great job. It gave them a lot of confidence. And I think it's how you approach it too. If you say, expect to make mistakes. I did too. That's fine. Let's just do this really quick. How to greet a customer and, that type of thing. Because that way, or how to introduce yourself to a friend, that way they've already done it. They've practiced it and they're comfortable with it. The other thing with my book, which I kind of wrote it this way, is if they don't do any role playing in the worst case scenario and they just read the book, they can read a section. And if they're meeting somebody that day, they can try it out. Or if they're at work that day, just try it out. Try the one sentence out. Like, never ask, can I help you? What can I help you with? Just try it. See what happens.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you say that. Never ask, can I help you? Yeah. It's I love that, because I read somewhere once that that's putting the onus on them. You're saying, I think you need help, and now it's up to you to figure out how I can do that. Like, what can I do? Or how did you just phrase it? You said it a little bit differently.
What can I help you with today? And that way they can't answer no or yes. They have to say
yes.
Something specific to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other thing I read, I don't remember where I read this, but it was, when you say, can I help you? That some people think asking for help is maybe a negative. And so the first response is, no, I don't need any help. I'm good. So as you just said, instead of saying, do you need help? Do you need somebody to jump in and help you? It's more like, what can I do? Now I'm going to do something. So why don't you let me know what it's going to be? But I love that.
Thank you.
I guess what's next for Smile? As you said, it's very evergreen. Do you see another evolution of it, or maybe taking it to the level of applying it to these really digital lives that we have? I'm just curious.
I've got the online course, and the only thing I've thought of, but I'm not a big enough company to do it, I don't think, is taking my online course and really making it autism specific, really breaking it out like your BCBA was talking about in really specific steps. Otherwise, the book itself and the course for most teens, most people have never even heard of it. So I could spend the rest of my life getting it out. My next steps really are trying to just find more people that can find it useful and helpful, because I feel like I have this resource and I need to get it out just to help the teens, because these years go on. If I can help teens be more confident, that's really why I wrote it, and be successful and give back.
I mean, it's a good point, talking about whether it can be specific to autism, because there's some specific deficits in that area that might need to be addressed slightly differently.
Yeah.
But I don't think I know a teenager who couldn't use it. Yeah, I have 5 kids ages 14 to 21. So I'm familiar with the teenage years. I don't know a single teenager who couldn't use this kind of support. But I do like that idea of also tweaking it so that it is specific. Perhaps, for example, I have a child who has nonverbal learning disability, which means that they don't identify nonverbal cues. So they don't identify tone. They don't identify sarcasm. And we're very sarcastic in my house. So that's a problem. And, so there are specific areas where that can be tweaked. And I like that. Now you've got my brain going.
Well, good.
On that. I'll be thinking about that. Yeah, we're going to have to talk about that later.
Exactly.
So is there anything else? If we covered everything about Smile, I Smile the book, I really think I can't stress enough what a great resource it is. And I do want to stress to not be turned off because it presents as job specific, because these skills are for anyone in any situation. And also, like I said, the brevity, it might present when you open it up like, oh, that's really simple. There's not much there, but there really is. Because when you take any one of these skills and you're like, oh, well, that's simple, get your teenager to do it and then tell me it's simple, you know?
Exactly. Well, one thing I would add is, Temple Grandin called me the day she read my book, and she really liked the fact that I suggested people volunteer at an animal shelter, because she said that's a great way for these teenagers to practice their social skills. So I, again, would tell the parents that are listening, maybe go as a family or have your teen, once he learns some of the skills in this book, go practice them at, PetSmart every weekend. They have nonprofit animal shelters there, and they need help. I mean, I've volunteered there.
Yes.
They need as much help as they can get, greeting customers, taking the dogs for a walk. That would be a great place for the teenagers to just get used to making new friends and engaging with other people.
Well, and engaging with animals is so therapeutic in many ways for anybody. And I think that's a great, I hadn't even thought of the PetSmart, but I love the idea of that. And also I've heard farms, whether it's, the animals on the farm or the farming, being in nature, anything about being in nature or being with animals can be really great. And with animals, you're unlikely to get rejected by them, I guess is the right way to say it. Someone said that, that's why, people want to support dog or what have you. It's teaching that responsibility. It's also knowing that something's going to unconditionally love you. I mean, as long as you don't kick it or something, I don't know, but if you're treating your dog properly, you're going to have that unconditional bond. And so that is an easier place to be vulnerable enough to express yourself for people who might not be very comfortable with it.
I agree with that. And I think even having a part-time job is a great way to practice those social skills. Not that it's all about work, but, we meet friends there or at church. There's all different places. But I think learning these skills and practicing them and getting comfortable and confident, it takes away the anxiety with teenagers. I think it's probably the best thing a parent can do is just get them out, read some of the skills, and then have them, maybe just one, have them practice just going up to somebody and introducing themselves or shaking hands firmly.
Well, I'm glad you said that about the anxiety, because I think that we can all recognize at this point that we have an issue with anxiety in our schools and with our students. And if there are ways that we can alleviate that will benefit them, as you said, the practice, understanding what the skill is, having it spoon-fed to you, and then being able to practice it until you're comfortable, and then generalizing it into a different environment. That's how we as humans learn skills. This isn't something new. We're just breaking it down because I think we live in a world where children aren't necessarily getting these skills specifically anymore.
Oh, they are. In most cases, they're not. And I think another great role-playing exercise is how to answer the phone properly. I think that can be used anywhere, certainly when they go into the job market. And just, body language too, helping them with their body language so they're standing up straight and they feel a little more comfortable and confident.
Yes. I don't know why I thought of this, but it wasn't on the phone. Although I've had some interesting, when my children will pick up my phone if I say, oh, grab it because I can't get to it, and they won't say anything, but they'll just be like, oh, it's so-and-so. And they've answered, and the other person's saying, what's going on? But I remember my daughter coming to me and saying, oh, someone's at the door. And I went over. Apparently she'd opened it. They'd said hi, and she just walked away to go get me. Left the door wide open. It was somebody I knew was coming. So it wasn't like, bad. I thought, did she just walk away? And they're like, yeah, just, all right, you're not here for me. And I'm out.
That's a great story.
Some tips on how to answer the front door. That's not for me. I'm out. So,
well, the material, the content in the book will teach them to smile and say, hi, let me go get my mom. Excuse me for a second, please. Thank you. Just as simple as that.
Exactly.
Or to introduce themselves and say, hi, Karen, I'm Emily.
Yes. What do you need, or who are you here for?
Yes, who are you here for? Exactly.
So no, I think it's great. And I would love to see that tweet for disability specific in some areas. And like I said, I might get my brain working on that. What else? Have I missed anything? This is just such a wonderful resource.
Oh, thank you so much, Dana. No, it's basically a quick, easy read on just social skills and career skills and volunteering, which I think is kind of an underused opportunity for a lot of teenagers because that will help with their anxiety also. You get out there, you get some confidence that you can do this, like all of us, you do something and you're like, oh my gosh, that was fun. And you met some people, you feel good, you're helping others. And I think for anxiety, that's a powerful, powerful tool to help with that. We all kind of go volunteering, kicking and screaming, but then we feel so good. And I think for teenagers, that's a good feeling for them, but something they're interested in. What I would ask them, what are you interested in? I put animals in my book because based on research, the kids care most about animals. So that was one of the volunteering opportunities. But, whatever cause they want to help with, that would be wonderful to have them involved, even if it's just for an hour. It doesn't have to be a big commitment.
Yeah, no, I know a student who is very much into those role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. And it was a comic book store that did a night, and they would go down and help out and help run it. And that was their volunteer work. That's what they love doing and getting people set up. And again, like you said, that's interacting and, following directions and all of those things. So, volunteer work doesn't have to be at a shelter. I think that's the other piece that sometimes we think of is that volunteer work has to be something really, what's the right word? I can't, but you have to be a cause. Like I love kids having a cause, but some children just getting them out and getting them interested and getting them interacting with other people. What do they want to do? There are very few people that are going to say, no, you can't work for me for free. Like if you can't come hang out in my bookstore for an hour a week and help me do some stuff. Very few people who are going to say that's not a thing. So if there's a way to just get them motivated and get them out to start, then that's a really great place to start.
I love that idea. I never thought of that, like not a cause, but just something out. And that's great that those kids did that with the Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it's great that it existed, but I hadn't thought of that either. And I thought, well, that's a really great way to do it. So Kirk, thank you so much. I really can't thank you enough. I'm so glad I stumbled upon your book and connected with you and got to have you on here to explain it. I really can't stress enough what a great resource this is for really children of any age. I think you can sort of introduce some of these skills. I know your book is directed at teens because it talks about jobs and stuff like that. But I do even think for slightly younger children, you really, as an adult, can get a sense of where those skills are going and where they're coming from. And there's a lot you could work on even earlier. So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh my God, I need to get in touch with Kurt and he's the only person who gets me. How do they do that? How do they find you? I know that they can find the book on Amazon and on your website. And I'm going to have all of that in my show notes. It's smilethebook.com, right?
Yes.
And I'll have all that in my show notes. If you're driving and you're not writing anything down, go back and I'll have it all in there. But where can they reach you?
Well, I wanted to tell you, you're welcome. And thank you so much for having me with www.smilethebook.com. No, I had a great time. Thank you, Dana. I'm so glad we connected.
Yes, me too. Absolutely. Well, thank you and have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining me on Special Ed on Special Ed.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Please don't forget to follow this podcast so you don't miss any new episodes and leave a review when you have a chance. If there's anything you want to hear about or comment on, please go to my Facebook page, Special Ed on Special Ed, and find me there. I'll see you next time here on Special Ed on Special Ed. Have a fabulous day. The views expressed in this episode are those of the speakers at the time of the recording and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company, or even that individual today.